welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really fundamental question. What actually makes someone a Buddhist?
It's a great question. Goes right to the core.
Yeah, and we're looking at it through, well, two really interesting sources. We've got Zongsar Khyentse Rinpoche's book, What Makes You Not a Buddhist?
Which is quite direct, very insightful.
Definitely. And then there's this YouTube dialogue with the Dalai Lama called Introduction to Buddhism. He touches on, broader values, but also specific Buddhist concepts.
Right. So we get a philosophical framework and also this kind of universal perspective.
Exactly. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really boil down what these sources say are the essentials. What are the key ideas that define a Buddhist? We want to make it clear, engaging,
Absolutely. Moving past maybe the cultural surface level to the actual bedrock beliefs and, well, commitments. Zongsar Khyentse gives us almost a checklist.
A litmus test, yeah.
While the Dalai Lama provides that wider context, it's a good combination.
Okay, let's dive in then. The first big principle from Zongsar Khyentse is accepting that all compounded phenomena or conditioned things are impermanent.
Right. Compounded phenomena. That sounds a bit technical, maybe?
It does, but it basically means anything made up of parts, anything put together.
So like everything we experience, a chair, a thought, a relationship.
Exactly. Your phone, this conversation, our bodies.
Yeah.
The point is, if it came together, it's bound to, well, fall apart eventually. Nothing assembled lasts forever in that form.
And the Dalai Lama gives some really relatable, large-scale examples, doesn't he? Like changing weather, global warming.
Yeah, things we see happening all around us, constant change.
And the insight isn't just, oh, things change. We all sort of know that. It's about deeply accepting it.
How does that help, though, accepting it?
Well, the idea is that recognizing this constant flux, this impermanence, helps reduce our attachment, our clinging to things as if they were permanent. And that clinging is a major source of suffering, right?
Ah, okay. So it's not about being pessimistic. It's about being realistic to suckle less. That makes sense.
Precisely. It's a foundation for peace, in a way.
Okay, let's move to the second core principle. This one. Well, it can sound a bit intense, accepting that all emotions are painful.
Yeah, that one definitely requires some unpacking. It doesn't mean every single feeling is like agony.
Right, because we feel joy, love, happiness. How can those be painful?
It's a specific Buddhist use of painful, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. It means even pleasant emotions are ultimately unsatisfactory because, one, they're impermanent, they don't last.
Okay, so the pain comes from them ending. Or from us wanting them to stay.
Both, really. And also, they're often rooted in what the texts call ignorance, a misunderstanding of reality. We grasp onto the pleasant feelings, push away the unpleasant, all based on this illusion of a solid, separate self that needs protecting and gratifying.
The Dalai Lama connects this to that feeling of an independent I, doesn't he?
He does. He points out how so many negative emotions stem from the strong sense of me and mine. Fear, anger, jealousy. They often arise because our perceived self feels threatened or wanting.
So even happiness, if it's based on that same sense of I getting what I want, is sort of tangled up in that same potentially problematic structure.
That's the idea. It's still part of that cycle driven by ignorance and attachment. Understanding this isn't meant to devalue happiness, but to see its nature more clearly.
So it's about changing our relationship with the emotions, not trying to eliminate them entirely, but seeing them as
passing phenomena, arising and ceasing, generated by certain causes and conditions, including our own mindsets. Seeing them that way can lessen their power over us. You observe them rather than being totally swept away.
Right, okay. That leads kind of naturally into the third principle, which is about emptiness, shunya. Accepting that all phenomena are empty, without inherent existence.
This is a big one, and easily misunderstood.
Yeah, my first thought hearing emptiness is like nothingness, nihilism. Everything is meaningless.
Exactly the common misconception. But that's absolutely not what it means in Buddhism. Emptiness points to the lack of fixed, independent, inherent existence.
Okay. Lack of inherent existence. What does that mean in practice?
It means things don't exist from their own side, fundamentally isolated and unchanging. They exist dependently, dependent on parts, dependent on causes, dependent on consciousness, on labels.
Like your example of a table earlier. It exists, but not because of some magical tableness inside it.
Precisely. It exists because of its wood, legs, function, the concept table. It's designated. It doesn't have an independent essence, and this applies to everything, including ourselves. There's no fixed, unchanging me somewhere inside.
And the Dalai Lama brings in Nagarjuna and quantum physics here, which is fascinating.
Yeah, he draws parallels. Nagarjuna, the ancient philosopher, used logic to show how things can't possibly have inherent existence. Any attempt to pin down a fixed essence leads to contradictions.
And quantum physics, how does that connect?
Well, at a subatomic level, things aren't solid, independent things in the way we usually perceive them. Particles exist in probabilities. Their state can be affected by observation.
So reality is less fixed and more relational, interdependent.
Exactly. The Dalai Lama uses these modern ideas to suggest that this ancient Buddhist insight about emptiness isn't just mystical woo-woo. It resonates with findings that suggest reality is far more fluid and interconnected than our everyday assumptions suggest.
So understanding emptiness helps dismantle our rigid views of the world, seeing things as less solid, less separate.
Yes. It cuts through our tendency to solidify and grasp, which again leads to suffering. It allows for more flexibility, less judgment, seeing the interconnected web of existence.
Wow, okay, that's profound. And the fourth core principle,
The fourth is accepting that nirvana is beyond extremes.
nirvana,
Right.
the ultimate goal, right? Liberation.
Yes, and the key here is beyond extremes. It transcends our usual dualistic ways of thinking.
What kind of extremes?
Things like existence versus non-existence, self versus other, pleasure versus pain, eternalism versus nihilism. Nirvana isn't just another state within those dualities. It's described as a peace that goes beyond them altogether.
And the Dalai Lama speaks about inner peace here, too. He talks about this living temple within ourselves.
He does, and he emphasizes that this state combines wisdom, prajna, and compassion, karuna.
Wisdom being the understanding of emptiness we just talked about.
Yes, the deep insight into the true nature of reality. And karuna, warm-heartedness or compassion, is that active wish for others to be free from suffering.
So it's not just an intellectual understanding, but it has to be coupled with this compassionate heart.
Absolutely. According to the Dalai Lama, that combination is key. Wisdom understands the nature of suffering and its roots in ignorance, while compassion provides the motivation to overcome it, not just for oneself, but for everyone. Together, they lead beyond the extremes of purely selfish concerns or intellectual dryness.
Which brings us really neatly to compassion itself. Because even though these four seals are presented as the intellectual definition, both sources stress compassion karuna over and over again.
They really do. It's presented as absolutely essential. Zongsar Khyentse says, okay, accepting the four seals makes you a Buddhist intellectually, but compassion is the vital motivation, the heart of the practice.
And the Dalai Lama is so strong on this point. He says basically all major religions ultimately carry this message of loving kindness, of altruism.
Yeah, he sees it as the common ground, the core practice. He often says his religion is kindness.
He even makes the point that loving kindness isn't just a spiritual nice to have. It's fundamental for our survival, right from when we're babies.
Exactly. He emphasizes our complete dependence on others' care when we're infants. That capacity for connection and kindness is innate, he argues, but needs conscious cultivation.
And there was mention of the Jataka tales and bodhicitta.
Right, the translator brought that up. The Jataka tales are stories of the Buddha's previous lives, often illustrating immense acts of compassion and self-sacrifice. And bodhicitta is that core Mahayana aspiration, the wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings.
So compassion isn't just feeling sorry for people. It's
Yeah.
this active, vast intention to help everyone.
That's the ideal, yes. An incredibly powerful motivator. It shifts the focus from my liberation to our liberation.
And the Dalai Lama gave that really practical advice to young Indonesian Buddhists too, didn't he?
He did. He encouraged them to share their warm-heartedness with their Muslim neighbors, emphasizing how compassion is key for interreligious harmony. It's not just an internal state, but something to be actively expressed.
So it really seems like, to wrap things up a bit, being a Buddhist isn't just saying I'm a Buddhist or, liking certain statues or rituals.
Not according to these sources, no. It's about a fundamental shift inside.
It's about genuinely accepting these four core ideas: impermanence, the nature of emotions and suffering; emptiness; nirvana, beyond concepts.
That intellectual acceptance, yes, the framework.
But then crucially, having that acceptance be driven by, or at least deeply connected to, compassion. Karuna.
Exactly. The understanding and the motivation working together. The Dalai Lama makes that distinction too. He says, whether you accept a religion is personal, but being a compassionate, ethical human being is universal. It's essential for everyone.
So for our listeners, Maybe the takeaway is this. You have these four seals, these core understandings as the sort of intellectual foundation. Impermanence, suffering emotions, emptiness, nirvana.
The view, you could say.
Right, the view. But the heart, the driving force, is compassion, that wish for all beings to be free from suffering. And integrating both of those, the view and the heart, that's what truly defines a Buddhist, based on what we've explored today.
It leads to a final thought, perhaps, for you listening. How do these ideas land with you? Impermanence, the nature of emotions, emptiness, the state beyond extremes? Do they resonate with your own experience?
And maybe even more centrally, what about compassion? How does that figure in your life, regardless of any religious label?
Thinking about what it might mean to lean into these perspectives, seeing change, understanding emotions differently, questioning inherent existence, cultivating warm-heartedness could be a really valuable exploration.
Yeah. This deep dive is really just a starting point, an invitation maybe, for your own reflection on these very deep and I think potentially transformative ideas.